Well, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. I am Pastoral Intern Colin Newhart, and welcome to Studying God's Word. So I have a little bit of an apology to make. I had this recorded earlier this week, and for some reason the file was corrupted, and we had some tech issues getting it uploaded. So if you see this later than our usual time that this makes its debut on YouTube, that is why. My sincerest apologies, and I trust that grace abounds. Speaking of grace abounding, let's get into our text this week. So we are in the time in the church year known as All Saints Sunday, and us as Lutherans, we celebrate it the Sunday after Reformation Day. So usually the first Sunday in November is when we recognize All Saints Day, All Saints Sunday. And this is a very intentional time, to remember those saints who have gone before us, those in our lives and outside of our lives who have gone before us, who have taught us something, who have passed on wisdom to us, who are the ones who contributed to building our heritage, not just as Christians, not just as Lutherans, but as people ourselves and as God's beloved. And so this week's gospel is very appropriate for this occasion. It is one of the more common stories that people remember. It is the raising of Lazarus. And so let's walk together through this, remembering the time of the church year that this is, and remembering that Jesus Christ is showing us that he is both human and divine. Human in the way that he has very human and visceral emotions and is not afraid to show them. Divine in the way that he can lift us to new life, just like he lifted Lazarus to new life. So let us begin. So we're starting in the Gospel of John, chapter 11, starting with the 32nd verse. And so we find that Mary is coming towards Jesus. She sees Jesus and she approaches him almost in a desperation, I would like to say. And she says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." So let's break this down a little bit. The thing that catches me here is, "Lord, if you had been here." That's telling us a couple of things. That's telling us, one, that Mary has total faith and trust in the divine power of Jesus. And two, it tells me that Mary is in a very deep and complicated sense of grief, because she is blaming the death of Lazarus on Jesus right from the get-go. She's saying, "Jesus, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. Lazarus would not have died." So in just reading that alone, the question can be, how does she know that? How does she know for certain that Jesus would have prevented the death of her brother Lazarus? And so that's how our narrative starts off. It starts off as this deep-seated faith in what Jesus can do and what Jesus has the power to do, but also this deep-seated grief. And so the narrative continues into verse 33. And it says, "When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved." Now, I want to talk about the word disturbed for a second. When we hear the word disturbed, generally, I guess my mind goes towards almost freaked out, almost scared, almost surprised, but in a bad way. But that's not entirely what disturbed means here. It says he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. It means that Jesus is noticing something is not right here. Something is going on. It's not necessarily saying that it freaked Jesus out and he wants to avoid it now. No, it's almost like Jesus is enamored by the scene of grieving people, and so he starts asking questions. Jesus says, "Where have you laid him?" They said, "Lord, come and see." And in that moment, we see Jesus's human side really come out here, because it says Jesus began to weep. And in some versions of the Holy Scriptures, it says the two words Jesus wept, which fun trivia fact, is the shortest verse in all of the Holy Scriptures, depending on what version you look at. So moving on, the Jews said to Jesus, "See how he loved him." So the Jews are noticing Jesus' human side here. They are noticing that Jesus is also grieving with them, that Jesus is not against them, that Jesus is with them. But some of them still kind of have their doubts, because in 37 they said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" So there's still this complex grief going on here. And part of that complex grief, if you've ever been in a situation where you've been grieving, part of that is you want to blame whatever that event is on something else other than it just happening. That's just part of the cycle, the very human cycle of grief. So these Jews are blaming Jesus, are putting it all on Jesus, because they have nowhere else to turn to. They have nowhere else to turn to process this very complicated grief over the death of a loved one. And so we go into verse 38 here, and it says, "Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb." Again, the word disturbed is used in the same way it was used before, almost taking an interest in, very much in solidarity, very much grieving with the people. He's very much on the same playing field on a human level as the Jewish people are that are gathered there, who are grieving. And so it describes it that Lazarus is in a cave, and his body has been there for about a week. And if you know the natural way of things, after a body physically dies, there is no longer these microorganisms. We know this due to science now. There's no longer these microorganisms protecting the body from decomposing. And so in 39, Jesus says, "Take away the stone." And Martha, one of Lazarus' sisters, just notes to Jesus that, "Lord, there's already a stench because he's been dead for 4 days." Again, with the decomposition thing. And so Jesus goes into this faithful conversation with all the people gathered there, and he asks the question, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God. And so he's kind of doing a are you in relationship with God sort of check there, reminding the people that with God all things are possible. With that God is with you even in this very complicated situation of being in grief and wanting answers. And so following that, they took away the stone, and Jesus started to pray. And now it's not because Jesus had to pray, but he's showing the people his connection with God. That he is more, that Jesus is more than just another human being, but also a divine, he is the divine, that Jesus is God and God's only begotten Son. And so he says, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you would always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. So Jesus is saying, I've proved to you I'm a human. Now I need to prove to you, I'm showing you that I have a divine side to me as well. So after that, he cried in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And it said the dead man came out. His hands and feet were still bound in the cloth that they used to bury somebody back in those days. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. Another one of the many miracles of Jesus that came to fruition right in front of the eyes of the Jews. So where does that leave us on this All Saints Day? What does that have to do with anything? All Saints Day encourages us to take this deep look into our faith, to take this deep look into our relationships, to take this deep look into who we are as a beloved child of God and where we come from. And that's what Jesus is doing with these Jews who are in crisis. He did not just perform the miracle of raising a dead man, but he also was there to care for the crowd, to care for these grieving people, and to remind them that through the ages, God is always there with them, through them, and for them. And that is our gospel for this week, and I hope that gives you a few things to think about as we experience All Saints Sunday this Sunday. So grace and peace to all of you on this day. I thank God for each and every one of you who join me in this Bible study, and for everybody everywhere. And I wish you a blessed week.